The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Mr. Speaker, it is a real pleasure for me to be able to stand at this committee stage and acknowledge the support across the House for this legislation. I'm very sad to hear that New Zealand First are having trouble with this bill, and sadly that we're not able to support their SOPs. It's not really appropriate for the Geographical Board to be making recommendations. It's efficient cost. Trademarks Advisory Board have the equivalent expertise and are in place under the trademark legislation, and there hasn't been a great deal of difficulty or complications involving them, and so it makes sense to use them in relation to this legislation. So we won't be supporting New Zealand's first SOP, but it's great to have the support of the Labour Party and others, I hope, for this bill, because ultimately this is a piece of legislation that's designed to help what is one of the most innovative and successful industries we have in this country, the wine industry. It was only in the late 1990s when the country broke the $100 million mark for exports for the wine industry. We're now this year at 1.6 billion and on track to increase that further into 2 billion and more over the next few years. So it's a phenomenally successful industry, and it's one the New Zealand wine growers are able to command one of the highest, if not the highest, premiums on wine in the world, and that all comes back to essentially the story. Well, that's not entirely true. It comes back to the quality of the wine, obviously, but which is a very important part of the process. But it is reinforced by the story and the branding that comes that's developed based on quality, but also on the terroir, the landscape in which the wine is produced. And so the ability to protect the intellectual property and the integrity of the wine that is developed in specific regions in New Zealand is an important part of securing that value proposition for New Zealand longer term. And that's why this legislation is important. It has had a long gestation, and I'm very pleased to be part of a government which is actually getting on with it and getting it in place so that we can carry on. I do want to acknowledge the hard work of the Primary Production Select Committee and note their recommendations to change Clause 9 of the bill, so particularly around the payment of renewal fees, so that the sustainability of the funding is better, so that was suggesting having the first renewal after 5 years. That all makes sense. My SOP is there to fix up a little problem where that we only wanted to have interested persons able to oppose the registration of a geographical indication and or its removal or alteration, and the removal and alteration had been left off, so that SOP deals with that. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I do want to also pay tribute to the work across the House in terms of putting this legislation together, and my hope is that this will be an industry that continues to thrive and grow and expand over the years to come, and that this legislation it's only a small thing, but an important thing, so that the industry can have confidence in the integrity of the branding that's been developed and can go with confidence into markets over the next little while. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing some of the other comments made by other members. Thank you.
I'm calling up Barry